Today, we're looking at 8 movies that shocked the world so much their most iconic scenes were banned in multiple countries. Let's start with one that redefined fear itself. 1. The Exorcist, 1973. Too real for religion. When The Exorcist premiered in 1973, it wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural earthquake. People fainted, screamed, and even had panic attacks in theaters. Paramedics were called to screenings in the US, and churches publicly condemned the film. The movie was inspired by a real exorcism case, which made it even more terrifying. But the real controversy came from one specific scene, the spider walk. Regan, the possessed girl, walks backward down the stairs, her face twisted in agony. It looked too real, too demonic. Because of this, the film was banned in Singapore, Malaysia, and parts of the UK. In some British cities, local councils refused to allow screenings. And in the US, some theaters had to hand out vomit bags before each showing. Even the Vatican denounced it. Yet despite the outrage, The Exorcist became one of the most influential horror films in history. If The Exorcist terrified people through faith, our next movie was banned for something much darker: its influence on real violence. 2. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. When fiction inspires crime. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange is now a classic, but in the 1970s, it terrified authorities. After the film's release, a series of violent crimes were reported across the UK, and some attackers even dressed like Alex, the film's main character. The media blamed the movie. Newspapers ran headlines like, "Killer inspired by A Clockwork Orange." Kubrick's home address leaked, his family received threats, and he became a prisoner of his own fame. Fearing for his family's safety, Kubrick personally asked Warner Brothers to withdraw the film from UK cinemas. For 27 years, A Clockwork Orange was impossible to see legally in its own country. It wasn't until after Kubrick's death that the ban was lifted, and the movie returned to British theaters, a perfect example of how powerful fiction can become. But if Kubrick's movie blurred the line between art and violence, our next film erased that line completely and shocked even horror fans. 3. The Human Centipede, 2011. The film that crossed every line. Horror often tests your limits. But The Human Centipede 2 didn't just test them, it obliterated them. The British Board of Film Classification completely rejected the film, saying it poses a genuine risk to human dignity. The plot follows a mentally unstable fan who tries to recreate the experiment from the first movie, stitching 12 people together in grotesque fashion. Even for horror veterans, it was too much. It was banned in Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore for extreme scenes of sexual torture and mutilation. Australia only allowed a censored version after 32 cuts. The director, Tom Six, defended it as satire, a commentary on obsession and fame, but critics called it sadistic pornography disguised as art. Ironically, every ban made the movie more famous. It became a cult symbol for films too shocking to watch. But sometimes, you don't need graphic violence to be terrifying. Our next movie proves that pure imagination can be even scarier. 4. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Violence without blood. Most people remember the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a bloodbath, but that's a myth. Director Tobe Hooper used almost no blood at all. The horror came from sound, editing, and atmosphere. Despite that, the movie was banned in Germany, Brazil, the UK, and several Scandinavian countries. Authorities said it created an unbearable sense of terror. The sound of the chainsaw, the heat, the screaming, it all felt too real. Even critics who defended the film admitted it left audiences in shock. What's fascinating is that Hooper originally hoped for a PG rating, believing the lack of gore would make it acceptable. Instead, he accidentally created one of the most banned films in cinema history. And while that movie was banned for fear, our next one was banned for love, a love that some countries refuse to accept. 5. Brokeback Mountain, 2005. Love that some countries couldn't handle. When Brokeback Mountain released, it wasn't horror or violence that got it banned, it was emotion. The love story between two cowboys, played by Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal, broke stereotypes and taboos. But in countries like China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, it was seen as immoral and promoting homosexuality. Authorities banned it from theaters, and even online discussions were censored. Ang Lee, the director, said, "It's just a love story." But for many conservative governments, that was exactly the problem. Despite all that, Brokeback Mountain won 3 Oscars and became a milestone for LGBTQ+ representation in cinema. Our next movie didn't deal with love or religion, it was pure excess. And some countries just couldn't handle that level of chaos. 6. The Wolf of Wall Street, 2013. Too much money, drugs, and F words. Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street broke more than records, it broke moral boundaries, with over 569 and paid the price for it. 7. Saw 3, 2006. When horror becomes too real. By the third Saw movie, audiences knew what to expect. Elaborate traps, moral lessons, and blood. But Saw 3 pushed it to the edge. Germany, Malaysia, and several European countries banned it outright. In Germany, even owning the DVD became illegal, classified as media harmful to minors. The film's brain surgery trap and rack scene were cited as examples of unrelenting cruelty. Yet fans defended it, saying Saw was about justice, not gore. Paradoxically, the ban only made people want it more. The uncut edition became a collector's item, a forbidden treasure for horror fans. And while Saw 3 was banned for violence, our final movie was banned for something much more human. Pleasure. 8. 50 Shades of Grey, 2015. Pleasure versus morality. Based on a best-selling novel, 50 Shades of Grey turned private fantasies into blockbuster entertainment. But not everyone was ready for that. Countries like Indonesia, India, Kenya, and parts of the Middle East banned it completely for immoral and explicit content. In others, like Russia, the movie was only shown in 18+ theaters under strict censorship. Religious leaders called it a threat to public decency. And in Malaysia, authorities said it was more pornography than film. Yet, the movie earned over $570 million worldwide. As many critics pointed out, censorship often does the opposite of what it intends. It makes people want to see what they're told not to. From possession to passion, from greed to pain, each of these movies push the limits of what cinema can show. What's considered shocking in one country might be art in another. So maybe the real question isn't why these films were banned, but why we're still so afraid of seeing our own reality reflected on screen. If you enjoyed this journey through cinematic controversy, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, which banned movie do you think went too far?